Introduction to the Fate of Azeroth. Communication Group. For 58218222 crossing to Azeroth, Dijie becomes an ordinary high elf who cannot learn magic, has no good family background, and is unwilling to become a savior. He only has a dream of an ideal life. Earning a lot of money and having some stories with his favorite female characters. In addition, he also needs to work on this. Volume 4, Chapter 11, Grey Valley, 1. You are listening at novelfull.audio. For the next 3 days, Dijie was preparing to head to Grey Valley. The advance army has assembled, and some orc warriors and troll hunters have been dispatched from the tribe. Gianna has instructed a paladin to set off with some infantry and dwarf musketeers. This unit was originally planned to have 130 members, but after its formation, it expanded to 150 people. In addition to soldiers, there were also human workers and orc laborers. Before leaving, Gianna personally came to bid farewell to Dijie and repeatedly reminded her. Be careful not to easily leave the team and ensure your own safety. I see, you've said this more than 5 times. Dijie didn't expect Gianna to become verbose, waving her hand. Seeing the man's lack of attention, Gianna was a bit angry. I am like a daughter-in-law who worries about her husband but doesn't have a good face. This thought made her cheeks blush, and before Dijie noticed, she quickly changed the topic. Where's Wenlisa? Gianna looked around and didn't see the beautiful, tall, and cool elf lady. I don't know. Dijie was also a bit strange. Why didn't the little moon come to see him off? When it came to Wenlisa, Gianna suddenly thought of something, with a hint of confusion in her eyes. Speaking of which, Wenlisa seems a bit strange lately. What's strange about it? In the past few days, her behavior have been a bit off. 3 days ago, when I went to see her, I saw her staying in the tent washing her feet, which was still in broad daylight. Also, the day before yesterday, she took the initiative to ask me if there was a clean lake nearby where I could take a shower. Coincidentally, I also had the idea of taking a shower, so we went together. As a result, while taking a shower, she kept rubbing her chest. Volume 4, Chapter 11, Grey Valley, 2. You are listening at novelfull.audio. And the strangest thing was that yesterday morning, she was brushing her teeth all the time. I had washed and she was still brushing. I asked her what was wrong, but she asked me if I could drink the foam of toothpaste directly. How could it be possible? What should I do with the foam of toothpaste? Do I wash my stomach? Don't you think it's strange? After Gianna finished speaking, she looked up at Dijie and saw the elf man with a mischievous smile on his face, clearly knowing the inside story. Thinking that Wenlisa didn't come to see him off, and that every time she mentioned this kid during these past few days of conversation, Wenlisa's face would turn red. Gianna vaguely noticed something, her eyes narrowed slightly, and she asked in a low voice. Did you do something to her? How could it be? What can I do? Dijie quickly restrained his expression and remained serious. Really, Gianna is very skeptical about this. Dijie evaded Princess Kurtula's gaze with a guilty heart, his smile uncontrollable. These few nights have been filled with beautiful memories, and the relationship between him and Xiaoye can be said to have taken a big step forward. Although the process was full of twists and turns, Dijie had to spend a long time persuading Xiaoye, coaxing and deceiving him, and finally destroying Xiaoye Liang's psychological defense line, making him willing to be humiliated. There was still one last step left, and Dijie secretly swore that he would completely obtain the Little Moon after the end of World War III. Speaking of which, the experiences of Little Moon and Teresa are completely opposite. The maid first becomes a woman and then carries out other businesses, while Little Moon has tasted the torture of Class 18 and guarded the last line of defense. Dijie regained his senses and found that Gianna was still looking at him with that skeptical gaze, so he simply stopped pretending. Anyway, this little girl was also a fish in the pond. In addition, Gianna and Wenlisa were bathing together. Dijie never expected these two girls to have such a good relationship, so he decided not to hide it anymore. Okay, I did do something to her, but it's all a form of performance art that enhances relationships between couples. If you want to experience it, we can give it a try. Dijie gave a wicked smile and gestured to hug Gianna. You, don't come over. Upon hearing this, Princess Kurtula's heart skipped a beat and she quickly took 2 steps back, her eyes scanning around. Fortunately, no one was looking this way, and her ambiguous relationship with Dijie could not be made public. Otherwise, rumors would fly everywhere, spreading 10 to 10. If it were to reach Kurtula's, her father and mother would still have siblings, so they might not be coming to urge marriage soon. This lecherous man also admitted like this and even flirted with her. Although Gianna has not yet been in a relationship, she has at least reached adulthood and has some understanding of male and female affairs. It goes without saying that what Dijie refers to as performance art is definitely something that makes girls very shy. Just thinking about it makes her feel embarrassed. Gianna stared at Dijie, suppressing her shyness and blushing. Qian waved her finger. Alright, I can't handle your affairs with Wenlisa. You should hurry up and leave, so as not to stay and disturb us. Dijie also restrained his playful mind and focused back on the main matter. So, I'll see you in a few days. You also need to be careful. The Grey Valley forest is quiet and beautiful, with mountains and fields of ash trees and colorful vegetation everywhere. It is full of vitality and greenery, and it is hard to imagine that this place borders the barren land of the desert. The survivors of Lordaeron have not yet set foot here, and a portion of the tribe who previously followed Gromash and later did not drink devil's blood, the dark spear trolls, have gained some understanding of this forest. The trees here are huge in size and have a long history, some of which can even speak. In the dense forest, there are a large number of birds, leopards, bears, and other living creatures, as well as many lakes of all sizes, which are very suitable for human survival and habitation. But obviously there is already a master here. The Night Elves. Marching through Grey Valley to a suitable open space, humans and orcs discussed building campsites, collecting surrounding resources, and stabilizing their feet. Dijie also set up his tent and strolled around the campsite, where human and orc buildings intertwined. This scene was truly wonderful. Mr. Dijie. Someone called out to Dijie from behind, and Yu reading www.yuukangshu.net was the paladin sent by Gianna to lead the human advance army in Grey Valley. Your Highness, Holy Knight, what can I do for you? Dijie didn't know the other person's name, so he could only call him with a smile on his face. I would like to ask you a favor, as Ms. Proudmoore has also said. If we encounter any trouble, we can discuss it with you, and besides you, I really can't find any other suitable candidate for this matter. The paladin looked a bit distressed, obviously encountering difficulties. I'm all ears. The thing is, 2 hours ago, I sent 5 soldiers to survey the terrain near the forest, but they haven't returned yet. I'm worried that they might have problems and I want you to go find them. The paladin said, sighing with his hands on his hips, I didn't want to trouble you originally, but nobody else wants to leave the camp, you know. Dijie nodded. On the way to Grey Valley, the dark spear trolls of the tribe shared information about the Warsong clan's process of logging in Grey Valley and encountering night elves. At first, people only felt that the forest was too quiet and frightening, but soon there seemed to be something else in the shadows of the forest. The Warsong beasts felt monitored and heard the hollow words of women in their ears. The voice was like a dead soul talking to someone, making them shiver. Although everyone knows that there are night elves in this forest, they appear and disappear like ghosts, and they may suddenly be killed, catching them off guard. It's normal for those soldiers to be afraid, and besides, Dijie can be certain that their camp is now being monitored by Cardor's distant relatives. Anyway, I should get down to business anyway. Dijie gladly accepted the task. Okay, let me handle this matter. Volume 4, Chapter 28, Jade Beauty, 1. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. As she spoke, she fell into silence. When Lysa thought Dijie was asleep and was about to fall asleep peacefully, but unexpectedly, an dishonest hand touched him at that moment. When Lysa guessed that the boy had become lecherous again, she habitually turned her head to the other side and heard Dijie's voice in her ear. Yes, you almost couldn't see me. Little moon, you should cherish me well. When Lysa was still wondering what Dijie meant by these words, and immediately thought that he meant facing the dangerous situation of Tichondrius. When Lysa didn't say anything, but in her heart, she agreed with Dijie. That was really dangerous. But the focus of Dijie's sentence is obviously not on the first half, but on the second half. The 4 words, cherish well, mean to take care of and care for. Of course, when Lysa knew what this kid was hinting at. Her hands were becoming increasingly dishonest, intentionally or unintentionally circling around the top of the big moon and pressing down. You're really thinking about this all over your mind, when Lysa scolded in a gentle voice, frowning slightly. Dijie finds it a bit funny, and Little Moon still feels shy now. But that's not what Dijie wants. He leaned his head on when Lysa's shoulder and said earnestly, Little Moon, can't we still face the future together? This statement couldn't help but leave when Lysa stunned. She didn't understand why Dijie said this. Didn't they just face various crises together all along? From the beginning of the Second War until now, I have experienced so many dangers and hardships. When Lysa has long regarded Dijie as her husband. Of course we need to face it together. Why do you have such a question, said when Lysa, why are you still unwilling to hand yourself over to me? When Lysa suddenly realized that this kid was craving her body and wanted to break through the last line of defense. She was a bit angry and wanted Dijie to roll aside, only to find that she seemed to be going too far. This time coming to Kalimdor, Dijie tried to satisfy her physiological needs, but he always restrained himself from taking the final step. They had a heavy responsibility to first find the item that awakened Aurelia, and then face the threat of the Burning Legion. After a big battle, they narrowly escaped death. After enduring until the end of the war, they were finally able to go home. There must be a mess waiting for them at Quel'Thalas, but there are still many days before the ship arrives. During this time, they are all fine. What reason does when Lysa have to refuse Dijie? After much thought, they couldn't find a suitable excuse. They have established a relationship for so long, it's impossible to say they still don't understand enough. Dijie is also excellent in all aspects, intelligent and responsible. However, he used to do dangerous things alone without considering other people's feelings. But later on, this flaw was corrected. If there is any other downside, it is having a lustful heart, but this shouldn't be considered a flaw, right? From any perspective, they should completely entrust each other. However, at the final step, when Lysa felt very cramped and uncomfortable, feeling like she was about to give everything, with an inexplicable nervousness, her heart pounding as if a great enemy was approaching. She thinks she's not ready yet. Little Moon. Dijie called out, waiting for her answer. Anxiety made when Lysa's eyebrows furrow, and Dijie didn't give any hint beforehand. Suddenly making this request caught her off guard. If she refuses Dijie and truthfully answers that she is not mentally prepared, will Dijie mistakenly think that she has not completely trusted him in her heart? In other words, they already believe that each other is a lifelong partner. What kind of preparation do they need? This is not a ceremony. When Lysa felt that it was really difficult to take this step. Refusing to accept was afraid of hurting Dijie's heart, and agreeing was somewhat difficult to say. She began to expect Dijie to directly strengthen her, but when Lysa knew that Dijie sought her consent out of respect for her. I am very tired and want to have a good sleep. When Lysa finally didn't muster the courage and could only politely refuse. She didn't dare to look at Dijie, closed her eyes, pursed her lips together, and didn't dare to move. She felt that Dijie's random touch on her suddenly stopped. Volume 4, Chapter 28, Jade Beauty, 2. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. In a moment, Dijie withdrew his hand and left Wenlisa with his entire body. Okay, forget it then, it's okay. Wenlisa was surprised. In the past, when Dijie wanted to make a move on her, she refused. Dijie would always coax and deceive her, pleading hard and soft. This time, it was abnormal that Dijie did not continue to fight. Although Dijie said verbally, "It doesn't matter," Wenlisa didn't feel at ease at all. Instead, she felt a sense of loss after Dijie left. The sound of a slight wave can be heard outside, and the elf ships turning back to Quel'Thalas are bathed in the shimmering waves of moonlight. Wenlisa glanced at her side and found her man lying on the bed with his back to her. A feeling of guilt arose, making her unable to sleep at all. She felt like she had done something wrong and wanted to find a way to make up for it. It took her a long time to break the silence in the room, and she spoke with some difficulty. "Okay, just use your feet." She had already witnessed Dijie's lecherous behavior, and there were no tricks that this kid couldn't think of from head to toe. It was easy to use his feet. "No, I'm not in the mood." Dijie's voice was very plain, with a hint of coldness, which surprised Wenlisa's heart. "Are you angry?" "No." Wenlisa is even more anxious now. She can be sure that Dijie must be angry. A lingering sense of guilt lingered in her heart, and she hesitated for a long time. Wenlisa took the initiative to get up. A rustling sound. In no time, the two pairs of shoes lying on the ground were covered by a white pajama and blue underwear. Wenlisa sat on the bed with a rosy expression on her face. It was the first time she had taken the initiative to do so. It was too shameful. Now that the arrow is on the string, it has to be fired. Wenlisa suppressed her embarrassment and said, "Later, you can go and boil me a bucket of water yourself. I can't help but take another shower and rinse my teeth a few more times. Is this suggestion enough?" With Dijie's embryonic brain, he must understand, and this kid lying on the outside of the bed must have seen her clothes thrown on the ground. Wenlisa nervously touched each other's arms and then lay down carefully. Unexpectedly, the person beside the pillow's breath gradually slowed down, and they spoke in a voice that seemed to be about to fall asleep at any time. "That's a lot of water waste. Water is the source of life, and we still have a long way to go. Save resources. Do you insist on doing this?" Volume 4, Chapter 28, Jade Beauty, 3. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Wenlisa lightly bit her lower lip, her crystal-clear beautiful eyes gradually emerging with mist. "She's like this kid is still talking nonsense, not satisfied, and still wants to get angry with her. Love or not?" Wenlisa angrily flipped over to the other side and left the back of her head to Dijie. The room was silent, leaving only men and women with their backs to each other. Dijie stared at Wenlisa's two pieces of clothing on the ground, silently sighing. It seemed that there was no play tonight, and there was a conflict with Little Moon. It was not worth the effort. The tactic of play to win has a bit of a gambling element, and if not used properly, such situations can occur. Dijie suspected that he was acting too hastily and was considering whether to be tough or not. Even though Xiaoya scolded and attacked him afterwards, the raw rice was cooked into cooked rice. Taking the initiative was much better than letting Xiaoya make a decision. As soon as the idea arose, Dijie dispelled it. Wenlisa is an independent girl with a good upbringing and a distinct personality. She yearns for a beautiful relationship, and her love philosophy is developed step by step. She hopes to gradually get to know her crush through beautiful romantic dates and then meet them honestly. Therefore, forcefully breaking through the last layer of boundaries does not conform to her view of love to some extent. Although she must eventually accept reality, it is inevitable that a thorn will be left in her heart. This involves following one's own desires or respecting Wenlisa. Dijie chose the latter. After all, Wenlisa was not his romantic partner, but his future wife. He had more than just desires for her. Let's just forget it. Dijie suppressed his desire and got used to it. When he had flirtatious moments with other girls in the past, he often had bad experiences, not just once or twice. Suddenly, Dijie felt another commotion around him, and his previously closed eyes suddenly opened again. The little moon seems to have sat up again. I don't know what she's doing. Not long after, Dijie's gaze fixed on the ground, and something burst into the scene. It fell to the ground, onto those two pieces of clothing. Upon closer inspection, it was the other and last piece of clothing. In an instant, Dijie's breathing stopped for a few seconds. He couldn't believe it and turned his head slightly, asking, "Little moon, what should be the explanation for the underwear that fell to the ground when Lisa didn't respond? It can't be because it's hot." Dijie took a deep breath and slowly turned over, almost suffocating the scene before his eyes. I saw a clean jade beauty beside me, with skin as smooth as cream, round and fair legs, and smooth lines. Volume 4, Chapter 28, Jade Beauty, 4. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Lying down, Tuan Air stood proudly like a bright moon in the sky. Her face turned to the other side, not very vivid, but one could imagine it was definitely a red lip biting tightly, with a scorching hot cheek. Upon seeing this scene, Dijie suddenly felt a bit dizzy and uncomfortable in his chest, unable to distinguish whether his heart was beating too fast or stopped beating. Little Moon agreed to him and made a choice. Dijie took a few breaths, unable to conceal his excitement, but unsure of what to do. This is different from Teresa. Teresa's situation is to directly and wholeheartedly dedicate herself to Dijie. And if when Lisa was able to bravely take this step, she must have gone through a lot of ideological struggle. Dijie cannot show too much impatience. Being too anxious will definitely hurt when Lisa and disappoint her courage. Dijie doesn't want this. He doesn't want when Lisa to feel that he urgently wants her. He must give Little Moon the most perfect experience. He bent down and wrapped his arms around Lisa, locking her in his arms like an iron band. He pulled up the blanket, making his slightly trembling body no longer feel cold, patiently waiting for the tense and fearful emotions to resolve. This was very effective, and when Lisa found that the man in front of her had extremely gentle movements. All the worries lingering in her heart were like spring ice and snow, gradually melting, and 2 drops of clear tears rolled down. Their breathing gradually slowed down, and their almost exploding brains had to catch their breath. This brief rest time is very important. Little Moon, Dijie said softly. When Lisa felt something and took the initiative to lift her head. At first, the fit of their lips was both gentle and sweet. Soon, the two of them got closer to each other, sinking deeper and deeper, as if they were about to drown. They were the most solid things in this world. The kiss lasted for several minutes before parting. Volume 4, Chapter 28, Jade Beauty, v. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Dijie didn't have his hands idle either, and it took him a long time to pull them out. Xiaoye, do you think I'm forcing you to do this and using force on you? When Lisa only opened her eyes at this moment, seductive and mesmerizing as she looked at Dijie, like a drunken beauty, her fair skin tinged with an intoxicating blush. Difficult, isn't it? She breathed unsteadily, propped up her momentum, refusing to admit her guilt, with an expression that was all Dijie's fault. Dijie sighed and said, "But I don't want to force you." Upon hearing these words, when Lisa really wanted to beat up this kid. Knowing her intentions, she wanted to test her feelings like this, and her anger rose. Are you having a brain problem? Don't be ignorant, otherwise get out of here. Dijie smiled and asked again. Are you ready, Little Moon? When Lisa has been intimate with Dijie many times in the past, and when she forgets, she will ask herself this question. The answer to the question has always been there, only one. Now she finally has the courage to face it. She nodded lightly, her eyes sparkling as she looked at the man in front of her. Then I will definitely not disappoint you. Volume 4, Chapter 28, Jade Beauty, 6. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Shoo, little moon, keep your voice down. There are other people on the boat. They can't hear. I used magic. Gradually entering a better state, consciousness flew towards the sky, and it was only then that when Lysa realized that her previous reserved demeanor seemed a bit ridiculous now. The night is fading, and the sky is getting brighter. The first ray of sunlight in the morning passes through the window and sprinkles on the room filled with daughter fragrance on the ship. Men and women who stayed up all night were tightly embracing each other. Volume 5, Chapter 10, Diary, 3rd Bullet, 1, and at the end of Chapter 9 in Volume 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Anyway, she counted for over 2 hours. Skilled and versatile techniques. Aurelia suddenly remembered that in those 2 hours, this kid and Little Moon must have done a lot of flower work. Although she didn't see it with her own eyes, as the saying goes, she hasn't eaten pork and hasn't seen a pig run. Based on her voice, she can infer one or two things, and with the help of Dijie's script, which contains comprehensive explanations of words and pictures, she can brainstorm on her own. As for the last point, Aurelia later looked at her sister's peach blossom land out of curiosity. It's not full, it can't stop overflowing, it's enough to drink several sips. Aurelia is really worried, if one day she dare not continue to think. I really can't find words to scold you. Aurelia was dizzy from Dijie's words and turned around to leave. Dijie stopped Feng Xing and said, "We finally managed to chat alone for a while. It's over so quickly. I have a lot more to say to you. I didn't sleep well last night, I need to go catch up. So, why don't I go to your place tonight? Are you looking for death?" Aurelia glared back with a murderous aura, feeling wary. This kid got the Little Moon and started targeting her. Aurelia reminded herself to be careful on this journey and not let Dijie succeed. You don't have a room yourself. A person is so lonely. If you don't want to, then I'll go find Teresa tonight, said Dijie. You. Aurelia was so angry that she pointed at the man in front of her and slowly clenched her fist with force. That's the real purpose of this stinky kid. I'm afraid she'll hinder the good things between him and the maid, so let's raise a warning first. Aurelia's mind was about to explode, and she couldn't help but curse, I'm too lazy to care about you. She brushed her sleeves and walked heavily back to her room. Dijie witnessed Feng Xing's older sister slamming the door, crossing her arms, and smiling slightly on her face. Behind the room door, Aurelia leaned against the door panel, as if losing all her strength. She slowly slid onto the ground, her hands folded on her knees, and her expression conflicted and conflicted. She, Little Moon, Sylvanas, Teresa, Gianna, and the unnamed night elf, as well as Liani and Gialia, most likely, this mother-daughter duo cannot escape. There is more. Aurelia seemed to have met the future, with many women lying on a large bed in all directions. That's probably what this kid thinks, provided he passes the level of when Lysa first. Dijie's method made Aurelia feel that all of this was really possible, depending on whether the Little Moon could withstand it, but looking at the situation last night, it might be difficult. Thinking of this, Aurelia let out a long sigh of helplessness and helplessness. Volume 5, Chapter 10, Diary, Bullet 3, 2, and at the end of Chapter 9 in Volume 5. You are listening at novelfull.audio. On the 3rd day of the 5th month in the 1st year of the Zinduolii calendar. When I was organizing my luggage just now, I accidentally came across my diary that I had written before. Looking back at the last one, I didn't expect that it has been so many years since I last wrote my diary, and it has been so long since then. It's really a bit disappointing. By pinching my fingers, I have been in this world for over 60 years, but in the lifespan of elves, I am still a determined young man with a dream of the harem and about to release myself. People often say that men have 3 stages. Mother and fetus being single, getting married and starting a career, and lying in the coffin. In my previous life, I died before I achieved success in my apprenticeship. In the first stage, I hiccuped. In the end, my biggest reliance was on my left and right hands, which was truly too common. In this life, I have made progress. Although I am not married yet, both feet have entered the second stage, and I feel a great sense of achievement. Next, I face a choice, whether to get all the beauties I love or to reconsider the issue of having children first. I made a list of members of the harem. In addition to the known girls, there is also the Red Dragon Queen Alexstasa, the Great Life Bonder, and the Dragon Queen, who is full of love and care for all life in the world, just like a mother. I can't wait to feel her motherly love. Besides the Red Dragon Queen, Terragosa from the Blue Dragon Legion is also quite good. In the future, when the Lich King becomes a demon, I will have to go to the Koala Heights to see if I can meet her. Then there's the Drenii Hooves, when exactly will Vinolin's spaceship crash to Azeroth, and the Succubus, although I hate other demons, except for Succubus. Oh, I wrote a bunch of names for no reason, how can I leave such evidence? Hurry up and burn it down. On the 4th day of the 5th month in the first year of the Zinduolii calendar. Today, Aurelia spent the whole day huddled in the cabin room and didn't come out to bring her food. I roughly guessed that she would sneak out at night while I was sleeping to find something to eat. Although I, Teresa, and her room were all adjacent, I didn't specifically block her. Instead, I went to find Teresa and deliberately left the door open, leaving a gap. The maid, like Little Moon, knows how cats stretch lazily, and the way they stand up and look up when they go. It's really beautiful. The 5th day of the 5th month in the first year of the Zinduolii calendar. Aurelia didn't want to see me anymore. I knocked on the door and she told me to get out. Hey, why is Fengxing Big Sister so ungrateful? I peeked all night and didn't even ask her to pay on the 6th day of the 5th month in the first year of the Zinduolii calendar. No matter how many times I have experienced it, going out to sea is always so boring. Little Moon took the initiative to contact me with a crystal ball, worried that Aurelia might see the traces left by the battle that night. I comforted her that Aurelia wouldn't know. Actually, Fengxing Big Sister has been eavesdropping on Fengyun from the beginning. A few days apart, it's okay for Little Moon not to talk to me, but when she speaks, my heart feels itchy again. On the 9th day of the 5th month in the first year of the Zinduolii calendar. It's really boring. In the midst of boredom, I suddenly miss mahjong and playing cards from my past life, and I instantly have the inspiration to do business. Why don't I create these 2 entertainment items to pass people's time? Compared to computers, making phones, which are almost impossible things, is really too simple. Not only that, I can also make Hearthstone cards. Anyway, the hero characters inside can be directly referred to as professions. And Interstellar, writing those battles into novels should be very popular. Hehe, I'm really clever. On the 13th day of the 5th month in the first year of the Zinduolii calendar. Bored to the point of explosion, the unchanging sea view without any distinctive features, why haven't we reached Nanhai town yet? To pass the time, I try my best to find something to do. Before leaving Kalimdor, Gianna told me that she had heard Medivh mention a diary. I just remembered the Medivh diary I got from Karazhan before. When I moved later, I always carried it with me and took advantage of these boring days to further study and research. On the 15th day of the 5th month in the first year of the Zinduolii calendar. I have read Medivh's diary more than 30 times, and there is no other information. But combined with this diary, I calmly thought about the false prophet. The fake prophet disguised as Medivh can only tell one thing. The fake prophet knows the future and knows that Medivh has formed a coalition of human orcs and night elves. I have 2 bold speculations about the true identity of the false prophet. Firstly, it is known that some future beings in this world, such as bronze dragons and ancient gods, have become Medivhs. But there should be no reason for the ancient gods to do so, so it is most likely a bronze dragon. I hope this is the case. The second thing is hiss, it hurts a bit. Teresa mischievously bit me.